Okay, Federalist 67, Part 2. Since I hadn't mentioned this book enough, I'm just going to put it right here for you to see. Make sure you take a look at Part 1, please. Federalist 67, Part 1, before we continue. Because I said a lot of things that I think it's good for you to listen to. The Constitution of the Executive Department of the proposed government claims next our attention. There is hardly any part of the system which could have been attended with greater difficulty in the arrangement of it than this, and there is perhaps none which has been inveighed against with less candor or criticized with less judgment. So they've attacked us so much and not on a solid ground. It's just crazy stuff. And as I told you in Part 1, when Cato published his essays, that was just great for Hamilton because he'd made a mistake. And Hamilton goes after him and takes it, actually really works it to his advantage quite a bit. Here the writers against the Constitution seem to have taken pains to signalize their talent of misrepresentation. Calculating upon the aversion of the people to monarchy, they have endeavored to enlist all their jealousies and apprehensions in opposition to the intended President of the United States. So they've taken advantage of the situation because Americans just had a revolutionary war. They don't like monarchy. These anti-federalists have equated or whoever was going to be the president with a new monarch. And this is nothing but a lie. Not merely as the embryo, but as a full-grown progeny of that detested parent. To establish the pretended affinity, they have not scrupled to draw resources even from the regions of fiction. The authorities of a magistrate, in few instances greater and in some instances less than those of a governor of New York, have been magnified into more than royal prerogatives. He has been decorated with attributes superior in dignity and splendor to those of a king of Great Britain. He has been shown to us with the diadem sparkling on his brow and the imperial purple flowing in his train. So all the things, all the pomp and glory that you'll see in the court of kings of France and England. Diamond, jewelry, regalia, stuff on their head, all this crazy stuff. He has been seated on a throne surrounded with minions and mistresses, giving audiences to the envoys of foreign potentates and all supercilious pomp of majesty. The images of Asiatic despotism and voluptuousness have scarcely been wanting to crown the exaggerated scene. And notice this line, he tries to relate to the dislike of the Westerners, of the Easterners, especially the Ottomans and the Ottoman Turks and the Muslims of the time. Because there was great rivalry going on between Western Europeans and the Ottomans at the time. So this is kind of an allusion to that. We have been almost taught to tremble at the terrific visages of murdering janissaries and to blush at the unveiled mysteries of a future seraglio. Attempts so extravagant as these to disfigure, or it might rather be said, to metamorphose the object, render it necessary to take an accurate view of its real nature and form. So they've just distorted everything where you can't even see what this Constitution says and gives, what kind of power it gives to the president. So they've just totally distorted everything. In order as well to ascertain its true aspect and genuine appearance, as to unmask the disingenuity and expose the fallacy of the counterfeit resemblances which have been so insidiously as well as industriously propagated. So we're going to unveil all this dark cover they've put on this subject matter and show you the true face of it. Anti-Federalists have been shamelessly, he uses this word, shamelessly misrepresenting what this Constitution is. In the execution of this task, there is no man who would not find it an arduous effort either to behold with moderation or to treat with seriousness the devices, not less weak than wicked, which have been contrived to pervert the public opinion in relation to the subject. They so far exceed usual, though unjustifiable, license of party artifice, that even in a disposition that most candid and tolerant, they must force the sentiments which favor an indulgent construction of the conduct of political adversaries to give place to a voluntary and unreserved indignation. It is impossible not to bestow the imputations of deliberate imposture and deception upon the gross pretense of a similitude between a king of Great Britain and a magistrate of the character marked out for that of the President of the United States. So it is still more impossible to withhold the imputation from the rash and barefaced expedients which have been employed to give success to the attempted imposition. So he knows he's in solid ground because he's going to bring up a mistake that George Clinton, writing with this under the pseudonym Cato, has made. He's made a big error of saying that in case there's a vacancy in the Senate of the United States, the president can fill that vacancy, at least temporarily. And Hamilton here says, no, there's no such a thing. The Constitution says differently. And if you constantly are going to come up with these lies and distort the facts, then people should not even listen to anything you say or read anything you write. In one instance, which I cite as a sample of the general spirit, the temerity has proceeded so far as to ascribe to the President of the United States a power which by the instrument reported is expressly allotted to the executives of the individual states. I mean the power of filling casual vacancies in the Senate. So remember, he says, the Constitution gives the power to appoint senators to the state legislatures. And in case of vacancy, the state governors, the executive of the state, they are the ones who fill the vacancy. So he says, we've caught you on a big lie, and I'm just going to use every word I can to show what a untruthful person you are. So he's got this advantage. He's just going to go after him. This bold experiment upon the discernment of his countrymen has been hazarded by a writer who, whatever may be his real merit, has had no inconsiderable share in the applauses of his party. See, this is according to Gordon Lloyd, who's in charge of the teachingamericanhistory.org, which I've referred to quite a bit. He says that this is one of the 6 times that Hamilton mentions people, if not directly by name, but by the pseudonym they write the articles that appear in the paper. And this person, like I said, is George Clinton, governor of the state of New York, and which was a big-time partisan, and it would have been to his disadvantage for this Constitution to get ratified. Like I mentioned in part one, he would have a lot to lose. As a matter of fact, those who were his big supporters, two of them went with Hamilton to the Constitutional Convention, and they walked out, actually. So that's why he's talking about his party. He says he's really powerful here. He's got his partisans, and they're spreading lies or writing untruths. And who, upon his false and unfounded suggestion, has built a series of observations equally false and unfounded. Let him now be confronted with the evidence of the fact, and let him, if he be able, justify or extenuate the shameful outrage he has offered to the dictates of truth and to the rules of fair dealing. Now, George Clinton had used the pseudonym Cato, and just while we're on the subject, Cato was, there were a series of letters being published by two of the very strong Whig politicians of the late 17th century, early 18th century Britain, who were very much against the royal concentration of power. And Gordon and Trenchard were their names, and these guys were quite a bit liked by the founding fathers, by the American revolutionaries, because of their ideas and stuff. So when Clinton used the name Cato, this rang a bell with Americans as somebody who's revolutionary, has revolutionary credentials, and is truly a lover of the United States and freedom. But in this case, Clinton, pseudonym Cato, messed up big time.